So today I just wanted to do a really quick and dirty video talking about the new Devil May Cry anime on Netflix. The series has ended up being a lot more divisive than I was initially expecting. Like seriously, whenever the series was announced, I thought it was a for sure home run. I thought it was going to be a massive hit. I wasn't expecting any kind of weird controversy surrounding it. But really, I think in a lot of ways it kind of reminds me of Doom Eternal in the sense that that game did something completely different that a lot of fans didn't like, and I feel like the show was very similar to that. With the Doom community, a lot of people love Doom Eternal, but a lot of people hate it, and it's the same thing with the Devil May Cry anime. There are a lot of people who really love it and who love the direction that it took the series in, and then there are a lot of people who want nothing to do with it. As for me, I actually have some really mixed feelings about it. It actually reminded me a lot more of DMC Devil May Cry than I was expecting. What I mean by that is that I feel like it has some of the same problems that that game has. So to start off, let's talk about the great things about the series. This first season of the Devil May Cry anime is 8 episodes long, and it kept my attention for the entire span. I found it to be super engaging, and I wanted to know what happened next. I found it to be super gripping and enticing. And again, I cannot stress how important that was to my enjoyment of it, that it kept my attention all the way through. There's an episode where a plane explodes and Dante has to fly through the air saving everyone. I think that part was awesome. I love the attack on Dante's hideout in the second episode. Basically, he manages to take down all these mercs without killing any one of them. And for the record, I'm not showing any animated clips, and the reason why is because I'm scared of getting claimed for copyright, which has happened to me before in the past. I also felt like there were all these little nods to past games. So for instance, Dante wears a cowboy hat whenever he's playing DDR, which is awesome. You know, and obviously that's a reference to the DMC5 cowboy hat dance scene. I think it's really cool that you have a bunch of DMC2 references. You see Lucia in the first episode. You also see Arius, who's the main villain of DMC2. You see him at the very end of the show, but also there are pictures with him in it, and you see that pretty early on. One thing I really loved and appreciated as a massive Hellblazer fan is the fact that you had a John Constantine type of character in the very first episode. Basically, you just had a British guy smoking cigarettes in a trench coat who talks about demons, and really, I just love that. I think it was awesome. And all in all, I felt like the series was legitimately made by people who appreciated and loved the original games. Even though I have some issues with the direction that it took the series in, I still think that their love of the series, the original video game series, was genuine. I think they kind of nailed Dante's personality. I think that was awesome. I think they understand that he's the wacky wahoo pizza man, but he also has an element of tragedy to him. And Lady said something to that extent basically at the end of the show in the last episode, where she acknowledges that she's looked at him whenever he thinks no one is watching. And so it's in his alone moments whenever that sadness sort of comes out. And so as I'm saying, I found the anime to be utterly gripping. I think the White Rabbit was a great villain, and it was a really weird reference to the DMC manga that came out years ago, and I read it years ago, so I have barely any memory of it. But I think that was a really wild, unexpected callback. And all in all, despite my issues with the show that we'll get into in a second, I still find myself excited for season 2 of it. And I think that's probably the best thing that I can say about the show, is that it left me with wanting more. And so there are a lot of great things about the show, but there were also some unexpected criticisms of the show that I was not anticipating in the slightest. I wasn't expecting the entire show to be an Iraq war metaphor. You have Vice President Baines, who looks exactly like Joe Biden, but I think he's supposed to be a stand-in for Dick Cheney. And he's voiced by Batman. He's voiced by Kevin Conroy, the late, great Kevin Conroy, who voiced Batman in the animated series back in the 90s, and he voiced him in the Justice League cartoons and the Arkham games. And Kevin Conroy was an amazing voice actor who passed away a couple of years ago, and so it was actually really cool to have him in the show. But basically his character feels very, it kind of reminds me of someone who would be in Devil May Cry 4 in the sense that he's focused on this so-called holy war between the humans and demons. He talks a lot about God and about religion and about souls. In essence, it seems like he's using his own personal beliefs as a way to sort of colonize hell. Or in other words, he's using his beliefs as a way to attain personal gain. And the show does this thing that I don't really care for. I have mixed feelings about it because I don't really like it, but at the same time, it kind of makes sense the way they handle demons. Basically, demons in the show are shown to not be demons, but Mechaians. And the demons aren't exactly demons from hell, but rather they are just, they're more so aliens than anything else, aliens from another realm. And so basically the way the show presents demons is it's meant to be a stand-in for refugees. Again, the entire show is meant to be an Iraq war metaphor. And so if you look at the games, demons are pretty unilaterally presented as evil. The thing is that in the original games, you do have Sparta, who is a demon who rebels against the demon lord Mundus. And so he's shown to be a good guy. But then aside from like that, and aside from like Dante, for instance, or Nero, people who are half demon, and I guess 2 more exceptions are Trish and Lucia. Aside from those few examples, all demons that you see in the games are evil, basically. And so you kind of have this theme running through the games where it's like your birth does not define you, essentially. Just because you come from a demon race, that doesn't mean you have to be evil, and just because you come from the human race, that doesn't mean you have to be good. And that's sort of a theme that you see throughout the games. And so the show kind of takes that and it runs with it to an extreme. And so it presents demons, as I said, I feel like they're depicted more as aliens than anything else. It depicts the demons in the show as being a misunderstood race. Basically, there are evil demons who try to control the populace of Makai, the demon world. And so you just have all these lesser demons who just want to be free and who live in family units and who want to come over to Earth and be happy. And so a lot of people, myself included, are kind of frustrated by this depiction of demons because it seems inconsistent with the way that demons are presented in the games, because again, in the games you're doing like these crazy combos on demons, and so it's kind of crazy to be like, oh yeah, those chess pieces from DMC3, those actually have families. And I feel like it's probably not a good look if you're going for a triple S combo on someone with a family. And so I think that's why the games kind of have to have a one-dimensional portrayal of demons. In essence, demons in the games are evil, and that's all there is to it. And so the show seeks to add in some ambiguity. It seeks to make things morally gray by turning them into, like I said, refugees. And the political satire was really unexpected. And again, I think it's just a really weird thing. It feels somewhat out of place. I understand why they wanted to make the demons seem like refugees, but at the same time, I think it probably would have made for a better show if they just kept a more traditional view of things. And then the other major controversial aspect was the way they handled Lady. I think that the core of Lady's personality is actually spot on, where she's really kind of brash. She's kind of in your face, and I think that's a fair depiction of her. But I think that the main issue that everyone has with her is just the fact that she swears constantly. And it's not the fact that she swears that bothers me, it's the fact that it's like every line that she says has to have a swear. And so it's like this thing where it just kind of feels distracting at a certain point. Like, I remember in episode 2, whenever she tells the story of Sparta, she swears in every single line, and I was actually cringing halfway through it because I was like, this is too much. You don't need an F-bomb every line to feel mature or whatever. And so a lot of people feel like Lady was absolutely destroyed as a character. I don't really think she was. I think it's kind of consistent with her portrayal in DMC3, where she just sort of hates all demons. In that game, she comes off as very cold and very harsh. And so really, I do think that they captured the essence of the character, but I just think that some of her voice lines are absolutely awful. That's not to say her voice acting is bad, because it's not, but just some of the way her lines are written. Again, there's just too much swearing, and normally that wouldn't bother me, but it just feels excessive. Another complaint that I see pretty frequently is that people feel like Dante was nerfed in order to make Lady look better. And I feel like there's some truth to that. I do think that there's a sort of internal consistency, though, that Lady is able to take out Dante in all the times that she's able to. I mean, especially if she has some kind of anti-demon around that she shows off very early on. But at the same time, Dante is shown to be very powerful, especially in episode 2, where he can move so fast that people don't really see him. And so it does feel like there's a bit of inconsistency there. It feels like Dante is portrayed as really strong, except for whenever he goes up against Lady, and then Lady is the one who comes out on top. It does feel like the show is more interested in her and her team than it is in Dante, which I think is a mistake. I think this has kind of been an issue with DMC for the last, 15 years, but basically in DMC4 and DMC5 and in the show, it feels like they are trying to really downplay Dante a lot. And I think what it is I feel like there are these writers that have this feeling that Dante is too powerful. And so as a result, he has nowhere to go as a character. He has nowhere to grow. But I don't really think that's the case. Because the fact of the matter is that there's always going to be someone bigger and stronger. And so I feel like you can do more stuff with Dante. I don't mind the fact that Dante isn't on screen every single second of the show. I do think that you need a good B story, and I think you need a strong cast of supporting characters in order to make a series like this work. But I do think you could have featured him a little bit more than he is. In some ways, Lady feels a lot more silly than she does in the original games because of her task force. She has jetpack boots, and she has special armor, and then she has this entire team of demon hunters, and they all look like 90s characters, basically. They kind of remind me a lot of Rob Liefeld and X-Force and that sort of thing. And I think that's probably what the team was going for with them. But it does feel like there's a large emphasis on them and on DarkCon and on the VP, and none of these characters were in the original games except for Lady. Also, I don't know that I really love her backstory. I don't know that I love the changes to it. I just find the way that Arkham, her father, is presented in the original games to be a lot more engaging. Because in this, he's depicted as sort of a tragic figure, but I kind of liked him more when he was just straight up evil and vying for power. And so if they bring him back at some point in the future, and they do something with him and with Jester from DMC3, then that wouldn't surprise me, really. Because I do think that there is room there for that. But at the very least, I don't really love the way that Arkham is depicted in it. Also, people hate Lady because of the fact that she kind of betrays Dante at the very end, but I think that's very consistent with her character. I think it's very consistent with the way that she's been presented throughout the show. I will say this show is actually a lot more gory and violent than I was expecting, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It just really kind of caught me off guard whenever they blow up half of Dante's face. And then lastly, I want to touch on the ending. A lot of people hate the ending where Green Day's American Idiot is playing, and then it just shows the US colonizing Mackay. But I actually found that to be like super fun and interesting, because I was like, yeah, that's what the US would do. If they found hell, then they would instantly try to take it over. And so I found that super interesting, and I found the fact that Dante was put into cryosleep to be super interesting. And so as I'm saying, I feel like I'm really excited for the next season of the show, even though I don't love all the changes they made to the original games. One thing that felt kind of inconsistent about the way that the demons were presented, right, is you had the White Rabbit, who was revealed to be a human who had fallen in love with the demons, basically. He had a demon family. And you had his gang, you had Plasma, and you had the plant lady from DMC4, and Agni and Rudra. And you have the Voltalic Black Knight, I think he's called in DMC5. And so you have these guys who are obviously like evil demons. But I felt like there was kind of a weird inconsistency with the way these characters are presented, because they're very much like evil demons. And so whenever it's revealed that like a lot of the demon families are like refugees and they just want a better life, and the White Rabbit is trying to break down the barrier between dimensions in order to connect the human and demon worlds, it felt like that was really kind of inconsistent with his actions because of the fact that he was like experimenting on demons. And again, you have like Plasma, who is seemingly okay with the experimentation on demons, but then whenever he sees the US Army destroying everything, he decides to self-destruct the building and sacrifice himself to kill everyone. And that just feels really weird to me. The idea that Plasma sees the demons being slaughtered and he feels bad, but at the same time he was completely okay with people being experimented on. That just felt like weirdly inconsistent and strange. And it sort of turns it into a thing where it's like you're trying to present the demons as people you should be sympathetic towards, but at the same time the people who are seemingly fighting on behalf of the demons are evil. And so there was just that kind of weird dynamic happening. But all in all, the show was just a really strange experience. And really, most of my problems with the show, specifically with the way that demons are showcased, they don't appear until like episode like 4 or 5. And so I was totally in love with the show for the first like 2 or 3 episodes. And then it's sort of after that when the show kind of goes in a different direction than I was expecting. But still, the show picks a direction and it fully commits to it. And I felt like one of the major problems with the MC Devil May Cry was that it felt like it was trying to be pulled in the direction of the old games, and it was trying to be pulled in the direction of like a new direction. But then with the show, it felt like it just kind of fully committed to something. And you may not like that something, and I don't like everything about it, but at the same time, the show did fully commit to it. And so I think that kind of makes it work better than DMC Devil May Cry. And so all in all, I don't think that this show is some kind of stain on the franchise as a whole. And I think it's really quite good, but at the same time, there are weird issues with it. Again, the presentation of the demons and the Iraq war stuff, I think that if you got rid of those things, which kind of form the basis of the show in a lot of ways. But again, I think that if you got rid of those things, if you changed the show up and remove them, then I think that the show would receive unanimous praise. Because there are a lot of lovely things about it. There are a lot of things that are phenomenal. And again, as I keep on saying, I really love this presentation of Dante. But still, it has that issue that a lot of adaptations have, where you watch an adaptation and then you're like, huh, this isn't exactly the thing that I fell in love with. Really, I do think it would have been better if they did like a more straight adaptation of Devil May Cry 3. I think there are different directions they could have taken the show in, and I think it could have been better. But at the same time, as I'm saying, I found the show to be utterly gripping, and I'm excited for the next season. I do think that the show actually has a lot of potential. I think the first season was already really good, but I think that the show can actually get even better from here. But yeah, it's just it's a really weird feeling to have so many mixed feelings about a show that on paper should have been a home run. A lot of people hate the Castlevania show that they did before Devil May Cry, but I actually really liked it. And I'm not like a huge Castlevania fan. You know, I really love Castlevania, and Symphony of the Night is incredible, but I don't have the same connection to those characters that I do to Devil May Cry. And also, Castlevania adapted Castlevania 3, which was a Nintendo game for the original Nintendo system, and so there wasn't really any story. And also, Warren Ellis wrote it, and I was already a Warren Ellis fan, though I don't know that I am at this point in time. And so as a result, I kind of knew what I was getting into whenever I signed up to watch Castlevania. And so it does feel like they did something similar with this show that they did with that series. It's not a one-to-one adaptation, And I don't like some of the changes that they made. Again, I don't really care for the demons as refugees type stuff. But again, as I keep on saying, the show was just so utterly engaging. I do find it kind of disappointing that Virgil isn't in the show, considering that he was depicted in the trailers and such. And one of the posters I saw has Virgil in it, and so I find it kind of weird that they were showing him off, but then he only has 3 appearances, technically 2. And so that's kind of disappointing. And so I guess that's what I have to say about the Devil May Cry Netflix anime series. Let me know what you think. For me, at least, it did kind of scratch that DMC itch. And so hopefully we'll get a new game sooner than later. But all in all, that's what I got. Thank you for watching. I'm going to the gym now, so have a nice night. Bye.